What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Bogey Ball Society. I'm here with Brian. Brian, we had a pretty special guest today, Mr. Jon Sherman. Was he what you were expecting?
Oh yeah, 100%. I had started listening to his content. I think even a little before we knew he was coming on, and kind of had an idea what we were going to be getting into, and he lived up to the hype.
Yeah, so Jon Sherman is our guest, and practicalgolf.com is his website, and he's also got a podcast. I think I've got that right.
Spot.
Yeah, the Sweet Spot. And Jon is he's an amateur golfer. He's one of those guys that makes the game more approachable because he isn't a guy who was a professional on tour and gave it all up for whatever. He's just a guy who loved the game, played in college a little bit, but even then, I mean, that's a great story too. I won't give it away. But yeah, just his like, I want to get better. How do I get better? And then now he's teaching people how to get better. Like it's such an awesome story. Just fair warning, you're not going to be here for an hour and a half. You're going to be in and out. You're going to be like, I want more. And you can find more.
Practical-golf.com.
You got it. And honestly, the Sweet Spot is a great pod. Like if you haven't checked it out, you definitely need to check it out. In fact, I'm guessing you know about them well. You knew about them well before you knew about us, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. We're just going to, share knowledge, share information. And I'm going to share the episode now. So yeah.
Enjoy.
All right, we'll see you on the other side.
And then, John, I got to ask you right out the gate, like, we're kind of a newer podcast. I mean, how much homework have you done checking up on this and making sure this is something you want to be a part of?
That's a zero.
Winging a prayer. I love it.
I just show
He's
up and
the
talk.
expert.
That's what I do now.
I know that's hard for you to accept, but John is the expert.
I got it. Yeah, I was going to ask you, John, are you nervous? Have you been on a podcast before? Are you comfortable?
I've been on a few. It's funny. I just got the nastiest email from someone who listens to our podcast who's not going to listen to it anymore. So,
really?
Maybe I need to reevaluate how I podcast.
Is it because you only spent 90 minutes on alignment and not?
I just finished listening to that one. I thought it was great.
I can't believe. I honestly can't believe you mind as much as you did out of it, because you said at the beginning, like, if you think we can't talk for 90 minutes, and I was like, I was thinking that, but
yeah. I still don't understand. I guess it's because Adam and me, I guess, complement each other so well, but I still don't fully understand how we extract so many words out of one thought. It kind of blows my mind to this day. And unfortunately, some people really don't like it, apparently.
I would love to have a segment right now. We'll call it Adopted Mailbag. And John, just read the mail to us right now.
Oh my God.
I will help you answer it.
I don't want to repeat it. It was vicious.
We only have about 7 listeners. So,
well, this should be a cautionary tale. I know you guys are new. You're finding your voice. You're early on in this process. I can tell you, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I try to be helpful and non-controversial, and really just focus on that part of golf. But you will see that people are going to disagree with you, and they're going to say things that you don't like, and it's going to make you think about stopping and not wanting to go forward. And it's just part of the deal about putting your thoughts out in public like this. But I also think it's a great thing too. So yeah, it sucks at times to read stuff like that. Unfortunately, I don't get much of it, but I do try and think critically about it.
We got a lot of feedback about Hayes going after me for having irons that are too upright.
I was going to say, that happens within the podcast. Like, do I really want to keep doing this?
Guys,
you have to hold each other accountable.
Let him go. Let it go. He's gonna get over it. It's gonna be okay.
I think once you get mail like that, it just means it solidifies that you've made it. Someone dislikes it so much that they're gonna make sure they tell you their piece of mind.
The internet's an interesting place. You get a lot of voices coming at you, and sometimes some are louder than others. But overall, like, I think the golf community that I think all of us are involved in, I think everyone who cares about improvement kind of settles into the same types of forums and communities. And for the most part, it's truly wonderful. Like, I think it's great that we have these like sub communities of golf interests. And for like the hardcore improvement nerds, I think there's a lot of support there, a lot of desire to learn and get better, and accountability. So I don't want to give the impression that it's been bad. It's been kind of funny that something like that does show up from time to time. But for the most part, like, people are awesome, and it is like a very encouraging sign about the world sometimes.
We've adopted the moniker "dudes, dads, duffers," but we should maybe adopt hardcore improvement nerds. I think that
Yeah,
sums
I
it up
think
pretty well
that's
too. Yeah.
For any of our listeners who really, really hate Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for transferring your hate over to us. We're happy to take it, and you can fill our mailbag up with just hate
what I'll
speech.
do
We'll
is
make fun
I'll
of you.
just do. I'm getting pretty good with AI, so what I'll do is I'll make an automation for certain words, and it will automatically forward it to you guys and say,
Absolutely.
"Well,
That's
if you're
perfect.
done with
Absolutely.
me,
That's right.
here are these guys."
Well, Jon, I asked you about nerves because the pressure's on. You're the second Jon we've had. In the last 2 episodes ago, we had John Sinclair, and the golf IQ is very high, so the pressure's on.
Nice.
But I
Yep.
think you're up to it. I think maybe it's standard fare to do the "tell us about yourself" thing. I don't know that that's justified. I mean, your name is out there in a lot of different venues, but I don't know how to introduce you because, you started. Is it fair to say as like a golf blogger, and then you became like best-selling author? Like, what's your business card? How do you introduce yourself in the golf space? Like, what do you do?
For my kids now, I'm trying to be a YouTuber to
yes,
finally get their
that's-
respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
That's the only thing I've done in the last 10 years. That's
great
actually
news. This will
excited
be on
them.
YouTube, and you can show it to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
That's right.
I get the same feedback from my kids already. You're on YouTube? Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that matters in life. I think, very simply, like, I'm a golfer. I'm not you all know I'm not a swing instructor. And I took up this game when I was a kid, 10, 11 years old, became obsessed with it like everyone else. And, I figured some stuff out. I think I had some natural inclinations toward golf that made me fairly good quickly. But then I did a lot of things that were stupid and just didn't understand really how the game really worked. And it kind of tortured me for a long time. And I'm 41 now, and I kind of had a rebirth in my early 30s, and that's when I started writing articles and just kind of explaining from a player's perspective, what I felt was just as important as all the swing tips and everything else that I'd been reading my whole life in Golf Digest and all that stuff. And I was like, well, why? Maybe I could just talk about playing the game and all the things that better players understand over time. But I think, a good coach in general is someone who can communicate to you in a way that gets you to change your habits, and more importantly, makes your process of improvement more efficient. I wish I could go back in time and tell the 11-year-old all the stuff that I know now. I think it would have saved me a lot of heartache. But my real goal is to try and just infuse what I've learned in my own game, and more importantly from other great coaches and watching other players of all levels. So that's really my perspective, is that how can I help you improve your playing skills is what I like to call it now.
I heard you on Chasing Scratch talking about going through your psycho phase, which I thought, God, I loved it so much, because I think probably everybody who has sort of settled into like, no, this is how I play, and this is, sort of graduates into that. I may not be the world's greatest, and I don't need to throw my clubs in the lake. But there is that phase where it is the most frustrating thing in the world. What is it? What is it that is it? I know you told a story about you're playing with your dad and your dad left the course. Was that actually the moment where you were like, I got to figure this out? Or was it just playing more golf? Because I know that also sort of timed up.
Yeah, I mean, that was
nicely.
part of it. It was just, at a time that at that point in my life, I think I was 23 or 24. Wasn't able to play much, wasn't able to practice much, but I still had that, part of my game from my teenage years where, I can go out and maybe shoot a 76 today. And I just couldn't do it. And at the first sign of that not occurring, I would get very angry. I'd be a horrible playing partner to my buddies. I just wasn't very pleasant to be around in a lot of rounds. And I try not to regret things in my life, but that's one thing I really do regret. And of course, it led to this boiling point, which I shared early in my book, where I lost my temper in a round with my dad, who at that point was learning the game, which is kind of funny. We have this weird trajectory where he took up golf later in life. And he just like walked off the course in disappointment. And I knew at that point, like,
No.
um,
I'm not
I
mad.
mean,
I'm
yeah,
disappointed.
it really was that moment.
Yeah.
Like I'm very close with my dad, and he's someone who's showered me with a lot of praise, thankfully, through life, and always wants to highlight the positives. But at that moment, he was not happy. It was kind of a side of him I never saw before. So I think I realized, my skill level and my expectations were way out of whack, and I think that's the baseline of why a lot of us get frustrated with this game. What we want is maybe too much, and what we're willing to put in is not enough. And when those two are at odds with one another, we get anger and frustration. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm perfectly zen on the golf course now. I'm not. I still get upset and frustrated. I think I'm way better at it. I don't throw clubs anymore. Um, and I could channel it a lot faster than I used to. But yeah, I still hit shots that I look at and I'm like, how does that happen? And then I kind of have to snap myself back into reality.
You're kind of speaking. I don't want to get too personal, but you have little kids too, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not so little anymore. I mean, my son's
Okay.
going to be taller than me in like 2 months.
Well,
They're
that's
they're 11, they're 11 and 9, and they're
okay.
huge. I don't know why.
Yeah, so I've
I'm
got an
five.
11-year-old
I'm
giant too.
5'8". Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
5'8", and my wife's
same thing.
5'6", and like my kids are gonna like both be taller than me, I
Yeah.
think.
But the reason I ask that is, so you are in that same stage of life, or you were at that same stage of life where we are, where we've got all these other demands. But
Yep.
I hear what you're saying about expectation management. I do it. I get it. I embrace it. But I'm just
That means
competitive
you
and
don't
want to get better,
embrace it.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
I get it.
right. I embrace it and I reject it. Embrace, reject.
No, he embraces
Yeah.
it in the form of a training aid, and then he just
Right.
immediately.
But John, really, my question there is yeah, you still found a way to go from anger management issues guy down to a scratch handicap and accomplished amateur golfer. Like, is expectation management part of the formula? Like, what was you just what would you describe as your formula to accomplish that in the midst of all those other adult demands?
Well, I don't want to discount all of the work I put in as a kid. I mean, I think it was Marty Jertson from Ping, who I think is a great guest for you guys to have on your podcast. He said something on our show a few years ago that um, I think it was the word compounding skill. So
Okay.
Marty's a great golfer.
Oh,
I mean, he was
interesting.
top 2,000 in the world. Has played in major championships, and
Yep.
he's like a full time engineer at Ping and the Stack. And I don't know how he does that, but he has a lifeline in this game of putting in a ton of work, competing at a high level in college, and he doesn't have to put in the same type of work at this point to play at that level. So a compounding of skill. So I think, I put in my work I hit a lot of balls as a teenager, and as much as I could in my 20s when I could put the work in, which wasn't much, I would say. But I think despite not optimizing my game, I had a baseline skill in my 30s that I could quickly ascend to what I thought my potential was all along. And that's different for everyone. So I think we all have our natural athletic ability to deal with, and how much time we've spent. Was that time spent properly? And that's kind of like your baseline with what you got to work with. And that's really hard to be honest with.
When the
So,
answer is no, as it is
yeah.
most likely for us. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, does LOFT come up?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
acronym. That's the hardest thing is like, I don't know, for everyone who plays this game, you don't know what your ceiling is. I'm still not sure what my ceiling is. I might have reached it already and I might be in decline. I didn't play as well in 2024 as I did in 23. I technically might have played the best golf of my life in 23 and 22. I'm not sure. And that might be a bummer for me in the long term. I don't know. So it's so hard to know. And I think that's kind of a cool thing about this game is like, you try to put the work in when you can, and you're honest with what that looks like on the course. I think that's what I try to do in my work. And you try and see where it goes. And the worst thing you could do for yourself is what humans are really good at. We're really good at painting this very clear picture in our mind of what we want. And if that picture is very clear of a reality that might not be realistic for you at this moment, then I think you've got a problem.
Okay.
And that's hard, like, because I don't want to tell people, like, don't expect much of yourself either. So there's always like a middle ground there, obviously. Um, but yeah, it's hard when you're a parent and you've got work obligations and you can only practice like 1, 2 times a week at most and play once. Um, the answer really is different for everyone because again, we all are bringing these different skill levels and cumulative skill and obviously athletic ability play. It does play
Sure.
a part in this game. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you kind of alluded to it. Can I? What is the state of your game right now? I've heard enough of the sweet spot to know that maybe wedges aren't feeling all like a strong
No,
spot
the wedges
for you
aren't
now.
great.
Yeah,
Um,
but you're not working with
I
a swing coach, are you? Or are you?
no, I haven't. I haven't worked. So I got lessons probably 13 or 14 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 of them. And really, if I hadn't had those lessons, I wouldn't be talking to you guys today. They really sent me on the right path in my swing.
That's
But
amazing.
I've been kind of self-taught since then. And if you listen to the show, you kind of know our ball flight Bible. I just react to what my golf ball is doing and what I'm feeling with my hands and make adjustments there. And again, I have the cumulative skill for decades of work at this where that seems to work for me now. I haven't run into a swing problem I couldn't manage. I'm not managing this wedge problem really well, as some of you know. That's been a real struggle for me. I've put a lot of good work in there, and it's a bit of a mental block. I think I'll overcome it at some point, but yeah, I think the current state of my game is that I mean, handicap level, which I think can be misleading for a lot of people because I do play a lot of tournaments and different courses. So I think the last 2 years I've hovered between. I got down to a plus 2.5 at one point in
Awesome.
23,
Wow.
which was kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? And then I went backwards a bit, and I think last year I ended at like a +1. So I'm still
Okay.
playing a level of golf that I could only dream of many years ago. But yeah, if I'm honest, I took a step backwards last year. The wedges didn't help. I think I felt a lot more pressure because I had done some really cool things in 23, and 24 was harder for me competitively because I think I was pushing a little too hard. So yeah, I think I reached like this pinnacle moment a few times, and then I went down a little bit, and I'm okay with that. Like it's not like I'm miserable or anything, but yeah, it was competitively, it was a little bit of a ugh.
Yeah, and that's the cumulative skill build is something that I've to this point I've truly never even thought about, John. And I just picked up golf 13 years ago total. So I played baseball as a kid, I played baseball in high school, I played baseball in college. I never touched a golf club until my baseball career ended. And I mean, I was bad at golf, bad golf. And I'm in the process now. I tried to figure it out on my own. I've been working with a coach all winter, which we've
Nice.
talked about quite extensively. And I'm making some really good progress. I'm at a block point right now with trying to get a better impact position. But like hearing you talk about the frustration level and the anger on the course, like I'm hearing you say that, and I'm visualizing myself through my progression on the course where I would, I'd get mad and I'd slam a club on the ground, or I'd, negative self-talk, whatever. And now I have 2 kids who are 7 and 5. They like to come out, and that's helped my outlook as far as not being explosively
dad perspective.
Yeah,
It was
not,
huge for me. Huge
Yep.
for me.
Yeah, not being like explosively angry on the course, because you
Yeah.
don't want your kids to act that way. And
Exactly.
I've said before, they're like the ultimate hype man, where I can hit a bad shot and they still think it's awesome because they think it goes super far because it goes way farther than they hit the ball. But you talk a lot about like the mental approach to the game, and again, that's not something that I've worked on too much yet. No, I'm going to be working on that more this year. But how? So when you started working on that, essentially what is anger management on the course, how much did you see an improvement in your game when you kind of shifted, maybe you were doing it before too, but more to a mental focus of golf strategy, not just hit the ball as far as I can, go after pins, because as me, I'm a 16 handicap. My expectation is probably higher than what it should be for my current skill. But how big of a role did that play in helping you get to where you kind of were at your pinnacle in 2023, and how can that help golfers who are maybe more in my situation to bring their handicap down?
First, I got to say, like, I heard every word you said. I'm going to respond to that, but it's kind of freaking me out. You are a like dead ringer for a mixture. I was like, as you're talking, I'm like, you look like Mackenzie
I can
Hughes
see
and
that.
Graham
I can see
Dillette,
that.
like had a
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you know, I work with Max, so I'm always talking about with him and thinking about. And I'm looking at you, I'm like, holy crap! And then I'm like, he looks like Mac, and then I'm like, he kind of looks like Graham Dillette too, which actually Mac's current caddy used to caddy for Graham Dillette, so it's like this
Oh,
full
wow.
circle of Canadian. And I'm seeing, are you from Wisconsin?
I am, so I'm pretty
So
close
you're
to Canada.
practically
Yeah.
Canadian,
Pretty
and it's
much,
just
yeah.
like,
Yeah,
it's
in
exactly.
the water.
wow, that's a lot
That's
to
right.
take in. Let me get to your question. So I think, and this is stuff I discuss with Mac all the time, who's really good at golf. And it's the same stuff that I would hold myself accountable to, or anyone else who wants to get better at golf, is that you need to figure out some type of system you can create for yourself. And I can give you a basic system of what that looks like, the controllables, I would say. Everyone always uses these platitudes, control what I can, but they actually work. It's doing them that's the hard part. So I think if you want to like get better at this game I don't want to, controlling your emotions can be sometimes a misleading word because we don't really control them. I think we can control our reactions to them. But if you're kind of like have a baseline openness to what can happen on the course. So no matter how good you get at this game, there is a version of you that could come out and is a total disaster relative to your skill level, and a great version. And you just kind of have to be open to that volatility. Like, I think that's a great starting point, because when you go out expecting like the upper echelon of your potential, then you're not matching up with the reality of the game. So a thing that I try and do, whether I tee up in a tournament or just around with my friends, is that I'm going to check off all of the boxes that I like to check off, which is, I'll give you a small list of them. First and foremost, no matter what happens, I want to have a good time. I want to make sure that I'm making rational decisions before every shot. That's a lot easier for me because I understand strategy at this point and I've worked on it. So it's kind of like a poker player seeing the flop.
That's a great
Like,
point.
so it's just
That's a
kind of like,
great point. Yeah.
I know what club I'm hitting. It's not taking up total mental energy. So I'm committed to that. I'm committed to going through a very well rehearsed intentional routine for every shot, because I want to make sure I can go into this little like comfort zone, a cocoon, before I hit the ball. I want to be really good at absorbing feedback and shots that I'm hitting. So if I hit a shot in the trees with my driver to the right, I want to instantly know, did I heal that? Did I keep the face open? That's something I'm kind of reading immediately. Am I a little angry at myself? Whatever. By the time I get to the next shot, I'll process that. So I want to be good with my reactions. I want to be good at absorbing the golf course and like the fun of it and being outside and doing that. So I have I don't want to keep going on, but I have this checklist of things that I've kind of like, I don't write them down, but they're there, and I try and review them afterwards. And I think if you can form your own checklist, it doesn't have to be identical to mine, and be really good at checking off boxes more often, you'll probably get what you want eventually. But more importantly, I think your experience on the course will be better.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
And that's like really simplified and hard to do. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
it's very, I do this with Mac every week when he plays. We have this list. I hold him accountable to it. Most of the time he checks it off. When he doesn't, we're not happy. And they're not scoring things. They're not outcome things, because he's smart enough to know that he doesn't control whether he shoots a 76 or 66, but he knows that when he sticks to this list, he feels way better about where his game is headed. And I think most golfers are really the same. I think it's like a life thing too. Like, we just feel good when we can Even in my own life, like I can wander productively or unproductively in what I'm doing in my business. And I feel much better when I can kind of create this system that's customized to myself. So I think we all need to just like figure out what that is. And that takes time. Like I don't want to make you think you need to figure this out this year. This could take you 5 more years, but you get better at it, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, I just bought a decade, pay someone else to figure it out for me.
Yeah, and honestly, like Scott did an excellent job at connecting all of the dots between a lot of important concepts, and he's a friend of mine, and we often talk about how strategy and psychology are really intertwined. And he's a great communicator, and I think that's the benefit of working with a coach. If I could, brag to people why someone would get something out of my book is that I'm trying to give you that system, and then you can decide which parts you want to take. And Decade's another great example.
Yeah,
of
no,
that.
I started to go down the strategy rabbit hole this year. I listened to Every Shot Counts by Mark Brody and started listening to a bunch of your content, and started reading your book here and thinking about tee shot strategy, approach shot strategy, all the things that once you hear it, it makes so much sense. Like you're like, how, like I thought that, but how did I not
how
like
can I not have
apply
seen that?
it to
Yeah.
my own game?
Yeah.
And I started to think about some of what my best rounds were. And one in particular was I was doing it as part of a challenge that was like, you got a point for every fairway you hit, a point for every green that you hit in regulation. And going into it, I was like, how can I get it on the green? How can I get it on the green? How can I just get it on the green? It was the only round that I think I've never looked at a flag once. And I shot my best score
Funny how that
ever.
works.
And I know,
I'm
I know.
shocked.
And it's like, it's so stupid, but it's real.
It's like a lot of things. Like, when I don't want to get too far off the point, but like one of my favorite exercises is when people take headlines from like different parts of history, like before the great financial crisis or World War II. And they're like, they were
So
totally
obvious.
clueless,
Yeah.
but they were totally clueless. Like before 2007, the economy is doing great, like blah, blah, blah. Or like before World War II, like everyone's like, yeah, things are. And then like in retrospect, it's so clear. They're like, how did they not connect all of these things? And golf's no different because the game's really confusing. So I think when you can ask yourself a good question like you were asking is, how can I hit the green? Like, that's why I tell people, like, you want to shoot your best scores, build your game around hitting greens. Like, and they're like, oh, that's so simple. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, start there and work backwards. And then you'll start connecting the dots. And that's like what a lot of good golf is like asking yourself the right questions. Like if you're in the trees, if you ask yourself, what could I do to make a good bogey here versus what could I do to make a par? You're probably going to make a different decision, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard to do in the moment because one part of your brain's like, let's, I see that opening over there. So yeah, I think that's what's like kind of cool about this game is that you figure out these little things for yourself and you're like, oh, that makes sense now. And then 2 rounds later, you forget it and screw it up again.
It's just like,
that's a given.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna aim for every green, and then you get to the third hole and you've shot a bogey, and there's a big juicy red flag sitting there for you in the front, and I can't tell you the amount of times that I've short-sighted myself there.
Well, it's important to, I think, and I'll be honest about my own game is like I get in this weird scenario like when I'm in a tournament under pressure and I'll do something that I've clearly told other people not to do. And then I have to deal with the backlash internally in my brain where I'm like, you idiot. Like you are you've been telling people not to do that for years and you just did it. So I think we all have to kind of be human also and forgive ourselves for these moments because we're still going to screw up. Like, even though you know the playbook, you're not going to execute it perfectly, like in the battle. Like, look at sport like NFL, like they know their plays before their game, their opening playbook, and they want to, some teams want to run the ball more. And then like, oh man, then things go crazy. Like, we're going to pass. Like, things change when like the emotions and the results start coming, and that's what golf does.
I've got a 5-year-old at home who, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but when he turned 5, he was allowed to go to the local course that's near us because they had some sort of incident that is nobody under 5 could go. And so we've now gone twice, and we went on Sunday morning. He and I, it's a little par 3 9-hole course. It's awesome. And he couldn't aim. It was I mean, he's 5. I'm not I don't think I'm too much of a taskmaster. But I mean, obviously he gets yelled at when he aims wrong, clearly, and I have the orange whip and I use it to whip. So
he's listening to that 90-minute podcast at bedtime tonight.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what I discovered is, and it was actually really helpful for me because I was standing there trying to tell a 5-year-old how to aim, and I was like, I don't know how to tell him how to do this.
It's hard to articulate it, right?
And but finally, and I honestly, I just looked at him and I said, aim with your shoulder, like put your shoulder at the pin, and all of a sudden, everything fixed itself. His feet fixed themselves. Like he like immediately hit it right to the pin, and it was such a cool thing to see. Like he's not overthinking anything. He's just thinking shoulder, pin, line up, swing, and then the ball went on a deadline right at the pin, and it was just very exciting to see. Do your kids play? Like, do you bring any of the, okay. So then,
no, like as you guys are both like as Jason and you were telling me your stories about your kids, I'm just like,
salt in the wound.
Yeah, they just, I've got wonderful kids. I really do. They act in a way to the rest of the world that my wife and I are very proud of. But they hate golf.
I've got one of those. I've got two.
I think some of it is like them kind of like getting at me like, oh, dad does like golf stuff for a living, so we're not. And I took up golf on my own as a kid. My dad never played, as I said. My mom never played, so I just kind of fell into it on my own. So I didn't want to force my kids. I think golf is a bit of a take it or leave it proposition. Sure, so they've done clinics with their friends. They've done a few like camps here and there at the course. And if they were going to get bit by the bug, it would have happened, and it kind of didn't. I don't know if it's my fault. I'm not sure if I did something wrong. I hope I didn't. Maybe I did, but yeah.
Let's mailbag.
Yeah.
Was it John's fault? Let's find out.
Maybe it's everything in the email the guy wrote to me was true, and that's the reason they're not playing. But I still hold out hope hopefully as they get older, like it'll happen. And sometimes I give them like oh man, I was just on a golf trip with a dad and his son and his daughter, and they were college age, and they had this beautiful trip with us together and shared this experience. And it like breaks my heart that we might never do that together. And they just don't care.
It's a good, gets a good line though. I'm going to
falls on flat ears. So yeah, they really don't like golf. Every time I'm watching it on TV, it's just like, my son's a huge sports fan. I'm like, I'll try and watch Mackenzie when he's playing on TV. I'm like, look, I'm coaching this guy on TV. Isn't this cool? Like, wouldn't you be like, if I coached one of your baseball like players you like, wouldn't that be cool? He's like, doesn't care. Which is, I think, kids in general, like they've got that zone in front of them that they worry about. But so I guess I'm still hopeful.
So my question would be because you took it up early, and now because of all the stuff that you've gleaned in your 30s and now early 40s, is there something that you would go back and be like, focus on this, focus on having fun, focus on it being like, because I know you said that you would just, drill balls at the range and sort of work that muscle memory.
But I think I did some things really well. Like I had a great short game when I was a kid because I was very instinctual, and the way I practiced was in like my backyard in my house, like trying to play a bunch of different shots. Yeah. But when I would get to the range, I wasn't very creative there. I would, this is essentially my goal for anyone who comes across what I do is that I wish someone sat me down and explained some basics on, what are reasonable shot outcomes, some basic statistics that I always like to share. Just a very brief explanation on how scoring occurs. We used to think like, I was just writing an essay before we started this on, I shot 87 and had 34 putts, therefore 40% of my score was putting. And I'm still arguing with people on Twitter about that concept. But just understanding like, golf is not that simple. It's a bit more nuanced into like what shots and clubs contribute more to your score than others. Basics on picking targets. So yeah, I think I wish I had a few hours of learning that stuff, and it might have saved me some time and heartache. And definitely, the mental stuff is tough because, I can explain that to someone. I can explain to you how I handle a pressure in a qualifier, but you're not going to be able to do it yourself unless you go through it
Did
and
you? How did?
fail and have like
Yes.
embarrassments and like all of this. I've been through some very bad moments in competition. That's the type of stuff you got to have to earn through experience. And same with like, the nerves on the first tee in front of your friends on a Saturday morning match. Like that I can explain, but you got to, go through it and then adjust.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had my first qualifier, and it was. I actually didn't play terribly. I mean, I didn't play well, but I had a triple and 2 doubles, and it just there was no recovering from those, even with 2 birdies, which was a nice surprise. But like, I only missed the cut by like 4 or 5 shots. Like, it wasn't even that bad. I thought it was going to be really terrible, but everybody else was playing bad too.
Just
so,
wait, just wait. I thought that
that was
just
all.
wait.
That was
There's
all
going to
early
be
in the
that
round
moment,
too, right? Didn't you have a really good back nine? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had 2 birdies in the back 9, and I, honestly, at that point, I just was like, it's raining, and I'm gonna have fun, and actually, it really did. That mental shift really did help a lot. So,
And that's very important for competition, is that you don't lose sight of why you're doing it. And that's obviously, we want to like win and compete and all that good stuff, but it's an outlet in life. I think it's a cool outlet if you let it be, but it also can it get pretty dark too.
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
kind of speaking to the next question I wanted to ask, because last year I entered my first club championship ever, really kind of my first competitive round outside of league nights, and I was doing all the prep. Obviously it's a nerve wracking event, right?
Yep.
I'm a 7-ish handicap. My first round out, I shot a 76, and I'm like, I got this. All right, cool. For me, that was a good score.
it's
The
great.
next day, I shot an
Great score.
87.
Yep.
Right. Uh, First of all, I wanted to thank you for writing The Foundations of Winning Golf. I'm really
thank you.
happy you came out with that. A lot of valuable. I did want to ask you. We've mentioned the Chasing Scratch appearance. You concluded that interview by saying, "I'm so glad I'm done writing the 4 foundations. I'm never writing another book."
Yeah.
What kind of feedback did you get that prompted you to write the next book? Because it's a great book. I'm so glad you wrote it.
Thank you. The way I kind of operate is that if I get focused on something, if like an idea pops in my head and it kind of festers around for a week or two, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that, then like everything else shuts off. So I think I might have gotten a tweet from someone or a few questions being like that, like, I have a club championship. How do I prepare for this? Or John, I'm playing in this. Like, how do you, because, a lot of people, as they get more interested in improvement, the next natural step is that I want to play in a club event. And that can be very nerve wracking. It's still nerve wracking for me to play in club events because it's
I'm
like your
sweating just
peers.
thinking about my experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I got some feedback. They're like, I would love to hear, whenever I wrote about, a qualifier I just played in, or what happened to me at the US Mid-Am, people are like, this is really helpful to understand what was going through your head and how you dealt with it. So that kind of was just like, all right, I think I could turn this into like, not the 4 foundations of golf length book, but like a useful guide to someone who wants to start playing more competitively. So yeah, I just was like, I'll write this and see what happens.
I have to add that to my reading list because I had some disastrous, embarrassing experiences last year in club
It's hard.
events.
Like everyone does. Like that's
Jay, start with the
Yeah.
first foundation of golf, then move on to the 2
Right.
foundations of
Well,
golf.
Well, and
Get
John,
up to
that's
4, and then
John, that's my follow-on. So, my 76 to an 87 the next day. What happened to me? Tell me what happened. Like, I mean, that because I threw up. I mean, same weather conditions.
Yeah, I
Same,
mean,
same club, same everything.
same thing probably happened to you that happened to me at the US Mid-Am. I had a first good day there, and then I was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, maybe I can make it to match play." And then boom.
Yeah.
I could
But is
not
it
make
just a
it to
question
match
of
play.
more reps and more exposure
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
environment?
exactly. So my point
Yeah.
is that that was a new experience for me, that was a new experience for you, and when you get to those new experiences, like, you just don't have a frame of reference, and sometimes it works out and, like, that's nice, but sometimes the result becomes so clear in your face. Like, I have a hard time, like, I'm still learning how to back up a really good first round at a tournament. I play a lot at Bethpage Black. We have a event there every year, and I've had a few times, like last year, unfortunately, I tripled the last hole to shoot one over, but I had a heater going.
Wow.
But still in fourth place after the first round, and that dropped all the way down to like 18th or 19th. It's happened to me a few times there. So I'm still learning how to back up a really good first round in a tournament. Like I'm still learning how to do that. It's
You
hard.
even see that at the pro level.
So you have to keep.
If a guy goes out and shoots a really
Yeah,
low
for
number,
sure.
it's really hard
Oh
to
my
follow that
God.
up.
Yeah, it just, it becomes, part of it is like, you could say like
Mm.
reversion to the mean. So like if you take any golfer and you shoot a 76, which is, if you're a seven handicap, that's definitely on the higher end of your potential. Or sorry, lower end of your potential in terms of scoring. And then, an 87 is still a very reasonable outcome for your handicap level. So you could just say, it was simply the discrepancy of scores. It's not wild to have an 11 shot difference within 24 hours. Part of it could be the pressure you put on yourself after that first round. And now you're thinking a little bit more about
That
each putt and
champion.
each tee
Yeah.
shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, now you're envisioning like what could happen to you.
That
Pro
statement,
contract,
that,
endorsements, all of it. Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
statement that 11 shots within 24 hours is not outside of the scope of the discrepancy of scores is an incredible. This is the game that we play. That you could go 11 strokes and still be considered within the
You
scope
can
of
go,
the
you can
norm.
go way
That's
more than
amazing.
that. You can go way
Well,
more
and
than that.
even just trying to handle
Wow.
it shot to shot. I've played in 2 member guest events since I've had a membership with our course, and we made the alternate shot playoff last year. And my partner hit a really nice opening drive. It faded a little bit too much, and I ended up behind a tree. And I mean, I'm nervous because like everyone playing jumps in a cart and they follow you around the course. And so I've never been nervous on a golf course until right now. And he's like, let me hit the first shot so we can stay in this thing. Like, well, yeah, that makes sense. So I had to hit a little like punchy 6-iron under a tree to get to the green, and I executed it. And I'm like, okay, if I can hit that shot, like I can hit any shot that I want for this thing. Like we're gonna be good. And we got to the next tee, and I pounded a drive OB immediately. So, and again, like I kind of lost that nervous feeling because I'm thinking, I just hit a great shot, and so
Yeah.
it can go not even day to day, but shot to shot. And so, how do you, if you had to give somebody just like one line brief advice, how do you temper like staying on? It's almost like on the verge of keeping a little bit of nerves to keep you in check without getting way too loose and then losing focus. What is there an approach or an attack to that?
I think so.
Huge bag of weed. Sorry.
So, the best golf, I believe, and especially in a competitive sense, is you have to exist between a space of caring too much, which is like, kind of living and dying on each shot, or not caring at all, which is where you're like, oh, I'm out of this thing. Like I give up. And like everyone's like middle point looks different because I think we all have a different personality that we bring to the game. You can see it on the tour. Like there are guys that are very emotional. There are guys who literally don't crack a smile, but they find that middle ground. So yeah, that's one of the hardest ones where you have to kind of exist in that space where you're kind of accepting of what could happen. So again, you could blow a tee shot out of bounds. You're like, okay, that happened. Am I going to toss my club or am I going to just give up? You don't want to do either of those things. You want to, again, stay in the middle. And I think, I believe it was Carl Morris who brought this phrase to me. The second time using it in a week, but it's a Buddhist phrase. It's called "Don't fire the second arrow." So the idea is like we can't control our initial like emotional reaction to like pain. That shot sails out of bounds. Yeah, I I don't think it's unreasonable to look at that ball going out of bounds and being a little angry at yourself, being like, what the hell was that?
Yeah, that I definitely was.
So yeah, I think like, if you do good work off the course, understanding what's possible, that can temper your initial reaction, but it's still going to be there. What is more within your control is what they, Buddhism is called firing the second arrow. That's inducing like the suffering on yourself. Like, are you going to beat the living crap out of yourself walking up to your ball? And this is something that, fortunately, Mackenzie Hughes is very open about this. And he has come on our podcast a few times and talks about like that struggle under that pressure. And that's what we try and talk about a lot is like, can you control that space between the reaction and then the secondary reaction? And like he's been really good at reducing. It used to take him 4 or 5 holes to reset. Now it's less than 1, hopefully. And that's I know it's a long-winded answer. You said 1 sentence. I gave you about 150.
That's fine. That's fine.
There's no punctuation. It's good.
This is why our episodes always go so long.
Yeah.
No one cares about
except
grammar.
Matt.
Yeah. Grammar. They don't have grammar police doesn't have jurisdiction on podcasts and social
That's right.
media.
You're absolutely right.
So yeah, I think like getting back to is like you have to find that middle ground for yourself.
Sure.
And it does look different for everyone else, but it is the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like one of the greatest challenges of this game is like, how do I like adjust to like these scores, these shots, all of it, like these results coming at me, and how can I move away from those and stick to something else that I have more control over?
Sure.
Again, it's a platitude. It's easier said than done, but I think that's like the basic formula.
Sure.
Well, John, speaking of podcasts, how many seasons and how many episodes deep are we now on the Sweet Spot? I mean, you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, we don't do. It's not like Chasing Scratch where we have like a season. We just kind of
how many years have you been doing
information? I think we started in 2020, so it's been almost just over 5 years. I think we're up to 160 or 70 episodes. So yeah, I think initially it was just a way for Adam and myself had become friendly. We always saw eye to eye on how to get better at golf.
And how did you link up there? Because I know you clearly had this kind of the same focus on skills and the same mindset toward the game. How did that connection happen?
So it's funny, when I first started blogging back in 2015, I hate that word, but I guess it's the truth.
I said blogger at the beginning. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, like, I'm fine with it now because like it's moved on to like influencer and then creator and all these other words. So like blogger is just like in a graveyard somewhere. So when I first started writing these articles, I just was looking around at what else was online. Like, I'm like, what can I do that's different and better, hopefully? And I came across his site. And I remember, I think I reached out to him on Twitter when I first joined. And I was just like, I think my initial message was, hey man, I just want you to know, like, I'm not plagiarizing your material. I think you and I just see like really eye to eye on a lot of things. And Adam's he's a great guy. So like his first, some people in the content world or in general, like view it as like a 0-sum game and they're like territorial and they don't want to talk to each other.
Sure.
But he was incredibly gracious and we just kind of started a friendship there. And, he has his style and I have mine. They're not exactly the same, but there's some overlap. But yeah, I think I just came across some of his articles and I'm like, wow, we really like see the basics of this game in a very simple way. So yeah, podcasting was something like I think both of us had stayed away from because we felt like we were too late to it, which is kind of silly saying that in 2025.
We know the feeling.
But I just feel like you're never too late to anything if you have like a unique angle or you can entertain people or provide value. So it's never too late to start anything. But yeah, I think we just were like, let's just take a lot of the articles and stuff we've written and turn them into podcast episodes. And that's how it started.
Cool.
And now we have people writing horrible emails to us.
You've made it. Like I said, you've made it.
That's our goal.
We've made it. Yeah.
We aspire to get those emails.
Do you guys do any video content?
So we just started. I think Adam just started uploading some of our podcast episodes to YouTube. Cool. So I just started my YouTube channel about 3 months ago, and that's something great. Like I mentioned earlier. when I get focused on something, like I want to do it well. So I'm very hyper focused on creating like a library of videos that will be like valuable to golfers who come across them. So yeah, it's been a pleasant surprise. It's been pretty cool to see the response so far. But I'm to be honest, I'm very uncomfortable being on video. I don't like it that much. I always stayed like kind of anonymous for a long time and like hid behind articles. But I realized that like, with the way things are changing online, like you have to do video.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of enjoying it, to be honest, but it's still uncomfortable at the same time. So yeah, I've been
Well, on
doing
the
more video.
Matt
What are
does
the-
all our editing. Do you want him to like block out your face for the
Yeah.
video?
I can
It's all
I can
right.
put somebody else's
Sometimes,
face on
yeah.
it. It's
Sometimes I just want to like crawl in a hole and disappear.
One of the things that you had mentioned was talking about how your swing, if you sent your swing to an instructor, that they may give you all these pointers, and that everybody's swing is unique, and it's how they get through the ball or deliver them, deliver the face at the path, whatever. I just thought that was such an interesting thing that right, like I'm listening to you, and but I have no idea what your swing looks like. I have no idea. Like, I just think that's such a fascinating thing, that golf is results oriented. Because you
It
could
can
tell
be.
me,
Some people
to
care about the
swing.
aesthetics.
Well, sure, but if in a perfect world, I would swing. I would look like Rory swinging the ball, and the results would follow. Uh, in no way am I ever going to be able to be that flexible, and that well,
You're
I mean,
far
I guess
too
I could
tall.
get that strong if I started 15 years ago, but yeah, exactly. I'm 4 inches too tall. But it is such an interesting thing to be able to say, like, it made me care. I was like, oh, I want to see what your swing looks like, because if I know that you're
I think it's on some of my YouTube videos at
good,
this
okay.
point. Or I've been doing like Instagram shorts as well. So they're
I've
there
seen a bunch
somewhere.
of those. Yeah, I really
Yeah.
love how you.
I mean,
so
do you want me to like put one up to like the screen here?
No, I can go
I
find
got a
one
few.
and throw it up if you
Yeah.
don't mind. I'll throw it up on the.
I was just
no problem.
Yeah. I mean, my swing is, I mean, the thing that sticks out to most people, my takeaway is not as bizarre as it used to be, but I roll my hands open and come very on the inside. It's actually quite similar to Nancy Lopez. Someone pointed it out to me. It's almost
Oh, interesting.
identical. I'm not a swing aficionado, so I never really studied many golf swings. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that I value function over form so much that I don't even video it or look at it, because I don't know really what I'm looking for. I'm not a swing instructor. And I've told this to people before. I'm like, I think video can be great if you know what you're looking for and you're working with an instructor, but I also think it could be the worst thing possible for some players, because you just don't know how all the parts of the car are working, and you start, messing around with the transmission, and all of a sudden the engine fails.
I totally agree. Yeah.
So
at least for me, I know that if I watch myself swing, all I want to do is try to figure out where I'm going wrong instead of where it's going right. And and it always goes right.
I was recording
That way.
in one of the YouTube videos I just recorded. I kind of used my philosophy of like the Rasheed Wallace, like, ball don't lie. So that's like,
Yeah.
the golf ball doesn't lie. Like, it has to respond to the physics of impact. And when you understand what those physics are, and they're not terribly complicated, I don't need much more feedback. I use launch monitors, but it's not really so much for like the path numbers. Like, it's more for like indoor simulation, so I can get better feedback when I'm hitting indoors.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm just reacting to my ball flight. If it's going too far to the right, I try and close the face more. Like, you've heard us, if you listen to the podcast, you hear us talk about this ad nauseum. So I think I've developed a swing that has good function, but obviously it has some aesthetic things that are unorthodox, but it works for me and I have a lot of trust in it. That's why I've never really tinkered around with it much over the last decade with like lessons. Now you look at my chipping right now, like, that's a struggle. Like, I know all the right things to do. I've spoken with some of the top wedge experts. I even got a lesson from one of them, and it's been a bit of a mental block for me, and that's been really frustrating. But I for the most part see it as like an inevitable roadblock that happens in golf. Like, something just gets out of whack, and maybe it's your putting, could be driver, and then it just becomes really hard to get it back into functional territory. I think I have a solution. it's not a pretty one, but I'm going to have to use it when I compete here in the next month or two.
Are you going to get a chipper?
Oh, we're going to hear about this on the podcast,
right, John? Okay, thank
No,
you.
I'm not going to get a
Just
chipper.
making sure.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not getting a chipper.
He's got the bunker on order, though.
Well, John, you sized up this new fledgling podcast, and you could have treated us as enemy or friend. Thank you for landing on friend and sharing your time with us.
Yeah, I enjoy talking about golf. I think it's great when friends get together and do. Assuming you all are all friends.
We met on the internet.
Any frenemies here?
We're like the Beatles. We're going to break up in a couple of years.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, if I can get a little philosophical for a second, like I think one of the great things of, anyone creating content, writing, podcasting, whatever it is, and getting your thoughts out there and doing something like this where you're forming a community is like, there's all these unforeseen benefits that I've found. And I've made so many friends over the years. I get to go to Scotland every summer now because someone liked my tweets and I have all these friends over there. Like all these crazy things have happened because, even Matt Hughes, like he hired me because he was reading my tweets. I didn't know I would be coaching a PGA Tour player because of my tweets. So like you put your thoughts out there and you see what happens. But I think it's awesome. Like I wish more people would do this because it's not a zero-sum game. I think there's more opportunity than ever to have like micro communities where like you have like, we get a decent amount of people listening to our podcast, but in the scope of the golf world, it's nothing really. So it's like all these nice like micro communities and you can access them and they kind of suit your interests in the game. And then, you make new friends. And I think that's awesome. Like, I think that's like why I feel bad for non-golfers. Like they don't get to do this as much. I know there's running groups and all that stuff, but I feel like we've got so many like subcategories of golf to choose from.
For sure.
Well, John, just for everyone that, maybe head is in the sand and doesn't know how to find you, where can they find you to figure out? I'm sure people are going to want to hear about your chipping solution that you land on. How do we track you and pay attention to that?
I'll video it. How about that?
There you go.
So yeah, I think the easiest place is like, at Practical Golf on Twitter or Instagram. My YouTube channel is Jon Sherman Golf, JON, not JOHN. And podcast is a sweet spot. My book, 4 Foundations of Golf and the Foundations of Winning Golf. If that's not enough self-promotion, I'll stop there.
I gotta tell you.
Well, and you don't have to do. Yeah, huge fan, big fan of both the books, especially the most recent one, the Foundation.
Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
It's great stuff.
I was just gonna
All right,
say,
everybody, thanks for listening.
I've been loving. I know,
Brian. Every time I try to do these nice transitions, you torpedo it. Every time.
Hey, this is the hard part about. I always tell people like, if you think podcasting is easy, record a conversation with your friends and you'll see what happens.
I don't think it's hard. I think
inevitable.
Brian does it on purpose.
It could be.
And I know he does it on purpose.
He waits,
especially with
to
4
hear,
people.
Thanks for listening. And then he's
one,
like, one more.
thing that I want to say.
Yeah,
nice segue, Hayes.
I love everything I'm reading in the 4 Foundations. I love the strategy. And now I'm going to go to a simulator golf playoff league where I have to throw it all out the window because it's beneficial to short side myself because of the way the 1 putt.
Yeah, simulator rules are
you
different.
end up with the 3 putt if you're on the green far away, or if I short side myself, we have a chance to chip and get, net 1 stroke. So I have to throw it all out the window.
Yeah, simulator golf, it can be different. That's totally fine. They're just suggestions. They're not. All right,
Hayes, did you want to wrap us up?
Brian, you really felt like that little comment was worth.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
John, thank you so
We're
much.
out.
Thanks.
John, thanks, man. Really appreciate you. We told you. We told you it was fast and funny and great. He's he honestly, like, we ended that episode and I was so bummed we didn't get to do more talking because it was like I wanted to keep him on for another hour and just pick his brain on like
at least another hour. If we could have him back like every week, that'd be great. But maybe we try to get him back at the end of the year if some of us make some progress.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind doing like a status update or a report. Like if he's willing to come back, John, if you're listening and you're willing to come back, we want you back.
Yeah. Like tell me all the things I did wrong so I can be better next year. But
also, just the breaking down of how to get better and what,
Mhm.
like, I don't know. I just the idea. First of all, the idea of being like a 5 and then getting to a +3 is
Ridiculous.
bonkers. But that's what we're shooting for. That's what I'm shooting for.
That's what I'm shooting for.
I'm shooting for scratch. Let's be honest.
I
just wanna
want to
able
be. I just want to be better than Hayes, but we know that. So
someday we may actually be better than Hayes. It's not today. Not today.
Right
It's
now
just
I am.
Mr. 75.
technically,
I don't know.
it's-
Once he posts that 75,
is
never
it
hear
in season yet? Can he post that one yet?
Uh,
All for naught. All those mulligans for
That's a
naught.
great question. I don't know. All right. Well, anyway, thank you for listening. Please check out Jon. We'll put all his stuff up in the description, and he really just couldn't thank him enough for joining us. So, anyway, thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Bye.